This morning's emphasis is on one word, which relates to our current sermon series titled Becoming Church, and that word is generous. Usually, if you ask somebody what being generous means, we think in terms of what? Money, right. But there are many ways for the church and for us as individuals to be generous. So I've asked Chuck and Mike to each hold a microphone, and instead of having you call out answers, which sometimes are hard to hear, I'll be able to hear you, choir. You can participate too. I'm going to tell me some ways that the church can be generous. Just raise your hand and they'll come near you with the mic. How can the church be generous? Tithing? Is that what? Time was your time, yes. John?
That's supposed to time.
Okay. We can certainly have plenty of people that are wonderful at donating their time. What else?
The food pantry.
Food pantry. What else? Yes. Okay, great. And we've been having a lot of special offerings too. So there are a lot of ways for the church. But what are some ways that you as individuals can be generous? Okay. Yes, good answer. Okay, that's great too. Anything else you can think of?
Teaching children. Teaching the children.
Yes. Not only teaching the children, we all can be lifetime learners, right? We need volunteers to do that. Anything else you can think of? Yes. All right, doesn't look like you're working too hard, gentlemen, so let me give you some ideas. Thank you for holding the mics. We can donate things in addition to giving money that we haven't used for a long time, right? I know some of you have things that are sentimental, and you definitely want to keep those, and that's fine. But I'm sure there are also many other things in your home that you never really wear anymore or use anymore that you could give that would be helpful to someone else. How many of you have clothing, including coats that you don't wear anymore? They just hang there. How many extra umbrellas do you have? Dishes? Pictures? Okay, men, how many ties do you have? There are only so many Sundays in a year. I'm sure some of you have extra shoes or extra winter gloves that just stay on the shelf or wherever and you don't use them anymore. If you have old towels, don't throw those away. I actually, thanks to Karen, donated some old towels for her to give to an animal shelter. They have to bathe the animals, so that's where they went. And I had some old sheets that I actually gave to John Gillen to use as drop cloths for all the painting he does. How about jewelry? How much do you have that you don't ever really wear anymore? Or books, or puzzles? Almost anything that you no longer need could be used by somebody else or really appreciated. You know that saying, one person's trash is another person's treasure, right? If you haven't used something for a year, why are you keeping it? Take a walk around your home and look for things you no longer need or want. They could be a blessing to someone else. In those ways, you can be generous and it won't even cost you anything. There's so many ways to be generous. You heard 4 short scriptures this morning that focused on generosity. In the Nehemiah passage, it's reminding us that when we give to others, even when we don't feel like it, we are strengthened spiritually and filled with joy. Out of joy for what God has done, we should want to give freely and generously to those in need. In the Proverbs passage, we're presented with a paradox. How can we become richer by being generous? The world says, hold on to as much as possible, but God blesses those who give freely of their possessions, time, and energy. When we give, God supplies us with more than we need so that we can give more. And in addition, giving helps us gain an accurate perspective on our possessions. And we realize they were never really ours to begin with. They were given to us by God to be used to help others. What do we gain by giving? Freedom from enslavement to our possessions, the joy of helping others, and a deeper relationship with God through an increased awareness of our dependence on Him. The book of Proverbs also gives us some practical instruction on the use of money, although sometimes it's advice we would rather not hear. It's more comfortable to continue in our habits, but it's wiser to learn how to use money God's way. He wants us to be generous in giving, to place people's needs above profit, and to help the poor. He warns us not to accept bribes and to be careful about borrowing. In the scripture from Matthew, we heard that storing treasures in heaven is not limited to tithing, but includes all acts of service to God. Giving our money to God's work is like investing in heaven because it helps more people hear and respond to the good news. We should seek to please God both in our giving and in our fulfilling of God's purpose in everything we do. Jesus made it clear that storing treasures in the wrong place leads to our hearts being in the wrong place. What we treasure the most is what controls us, whether we admit it or not. What we think about, talk about, or spend our money on can dominate us. If possessions and money are too important to us, we must establish control of our hearts. We need to get rid of the things that have become idols to us. Jesus calls for a decision to live contentedly with whatever we have because we have chosen eternal values over temporary earthly ones. And in the Acts passage, we heard that the Christians in Jerusalem shared all they had so that all could benefit from God's gifts. They recognized other believers as brothers and sisters. Take a minute to look through your checkbook or your credit card statement. How do you spend your money? Where does extra money go? Eating out, playing golf, going to the movies, paying for extra TV channels? Over the next month or so, I encourage you to skip one of these extra pleasures and give the money you saved to a Christian ministry. Good works are a sign that we are grateful to God and that we love Him. What service projects in the community or here at church could you join? Ask the Lord to guide you to a service that pleases Him. Everyone was attentive to the teaching of the apostles, and no one missed a service or a Bible study because they recognized the other believers as brothers and sisters in the family of God. The Christians in Jerusalem shared all they had so that all could benefit from God's gifts. It's tempting especially if we have material wealth, to cut ourselves off from one another, concerning ourselves with only our own interest, providing for and enjoying only our own little place in the world. However, as part of God's spiritual family, we should find every way possible to help one another. God's family works best when its members work together, and so do each of our own individual families. But listen again to the 2 verses from Acts. And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. We need to use well what God has entrusted to us. God gives us time, gifts, and other resources according to our abilities, and He expects us to use them wisely until He returns. We are responsible to use well what God has given us. The issue is not how much we have, but how well we use what we have, using our talents to further God's kingdom. Does our time, our money, our hospitality, all our resources have eternal value? We all have resources, gifts, and abilities that we can use to serve God and others. The number of abilities may be different, but we all have some ability. You might be a good listener, or you may have skills that you can teach others. The church always needs volunteers. What is the greatest gift that God has given you to use? Could it be sharing the gospel message with others? What a life-giving gift that is worth sharing generously. We have a generous God who has blessed us with talents and abilities, and He allows us to partner with Him in His work. When we are faithful, God always provides. During all the years you have gone to church, you've had pastors and teachers give generously of their time, and countless others who have volunteered their time. Generosity is not about guilt, it's about belonging, and this is where we truly belong to each other. Generosity stops being a sacrifice at times like this. Instead of thinking that we own things, we should remember that we are to be good stewards, managing or taking care of our things responsibly and sharing with others whenever we can. And like everything else, the church is not perfect. Why? Because the church is made up of imperfect people. I'm not perfect, and sorry, but neither is Pastor Julia. And none of you are either. And that doesn't mean we cannot be useful and generous. That only means that we are right here where we should be. We need to remember that Jesus gave His all, literally, for us. Someone who spends a lot of time in prayer but is not generous has missed the point. Someone who says, I give my time, but doesn't give a dime, has missed the point. The early Christians were extravagantly generous. As a matter of fact, in the earliest descriptions of them by non-Christians, it was their love and care for one another and their generosity to those in need that was the most striking and compelling. Their generosity was their most powerful way of evangelizing or witnessing to their faith. They lived peacefully, shared their lives and resources, they worshiped together daily, and they had glad and generous hearts and the goodwill of the people. What an amazing legacy. I would like to share something that Chris Andrews wrote. Do you want to experience the living Christ? Go to church. Oh, I know there will be frustration. The church likes to major in the minors, quarreling over the most foolish things. It seems at times to enjoy poor health and love complaining. I know all this, but I also know that if you want to find Jesus, it will be in the church. I think of my own life, Chris continues. Both of my parents were alcoholics. Both died of their own hands through suicide. We lived from day to day in a volatile world of economic uncertainty, and the church came. The people of the church came to help. The local Methodist church showed up with food, clothes, and most of all, kindness. They welcomed me into their fellowship. They made me part of their choir. They said I was important to them. I had nothing to offer in return, but they didn't care about that. They offered a new economics, the economics of grace. All I knew was that I was one lost fellow, and these good people put the arms of Jesus around my life and sent me in a new direction of hope and meaning and purpose. I found Jesus, or Jesus had found me, and life was forever changed. The Christian faith is not about religious thinking, it's about relationship. And in the midst of the comings and goings of our lives, the risen Christ appears. Community happens and the church takes shape. We are part of the imperfect, grace-filled community called church. And Chris adds, remember this the next time you're tempted to give up on church. If you want to experience Jesus, this is the place and the people. For in spite of their imperfections and idiosyncrasies, the church is where the living Christ lives. Give thanks for your church and your place in it. There's no better place to find what you're looking for, which is the touch of the Master's hand in your life. Thanks be to God for the church. Chris's story is an example of the church being generous. Our church does many things for many people, but brothers and sisters, each of us can do more. Let's be a community where people hold things loosely and people tightly. Generosity is not about guilt, it's about belonging. I can honestly say that you can never, ever outgive God. I've given away a lot of time and a lot of money over the years, and the more I give, the more I have. You cannot outgive God. So let's continue to be a church that cares and is generous in countless ways, and do even more so that others will come to know Christ as their Lord. Ask yourself this week, what can I do for someone else as an act of generosity? How can I best be the church? Amen.